Another significant trend impacting veterinary medicine is that of student debt. And this is certainly not the first time that this has been talked about. In fact, Veterinary Economics did a cover story on this in the early part of 2009, but it continues to be an issue in veterinary medicine, and one that we have not fully dealt with yet. So let's talk a little bit about some of the statistics around this trend. If you go out and ask the average veterinarian how much debt they have, 68% are going to tell you none. And when I talk about the average veterinarian here, what I mean is practicing veterinarians ranging from those who have just graduated to those that have been out of school for, say, 30, 35, 40 years. But the average veterinarian in that pool, or 68% of them anyways, has no debt. Another 3% have less than 10% of debt. 8% have $25,000 to $50,000 worth of debt. Another 10% have $50,000 to $99,000 worth of debt. So there's no question some percentages of those individuals have student debt, but the vast majority don't. And I think that's a really key point, because so many of these people do not have student debt, or so many of the practitioners out in hospitals now do not have debt. I don't think that they've been as quick to understand how significant this debt issue is and how it impacts them personally. If you look at the numbers for 2010 graduates of U.S. veterinary colleges, you're going to find that the average debt of one of those graduates is almost $134,000. Compare that to the average private practice starting salary of $67,000, and you've got a really big difference. Historically, financial planners and financial gurus have said that you should not spend more than your first year's salary in debt in order to finance your education. So if your first year out from any kind of an academic program, you're going to earn $67,000, then you should not have debt of more than $67,000. What we have here is a 2-to-1 ratio. So we have debt of $134,000 compared to starting salaries of $67,000. Now, this trend is not unique to veterinary medicine. The cost of education is going up everywhere, but it's appearing to hit us particularly hard. 90% of those graduating from veterinary school have debt. 91% of the debt is incurred while in veterinary school. So it's not like students are coming in with a whole bunch of debt before they incur their veterinary school debt. About 37% of students have debt in excess of $150,000. 15% have debt in excess of $200,000, and it's not uncommon to see debt in excess of $250,000. If we were to include the Caribbean schools, which are privately owned schools, in this survey, the averages would be much higher. So this is a huge amount of money to know that you're going to have to pay back before you even start work. I had $30,000 in debt when I graduated from veterinary school, and I thought that was a lot. I can't even imagine starting a career with $250,000 worth of debt. And obviously, students are concerned about this. The student chapter of the AVMA asked its members in their 2009-2010 student survey what their top concerns were, and without a doubt, debt repayment was at the top of the list. 47% of members said that, yeah, this is one of the things that we're most concerned about. So it's not that students are unaware, it's just we don't have an answer to this problem yet. Part of the problem is not the cost of veterinary medicine, but it's what we pay veterinarians once they get out of school. If you compare our earnings as veterinarians to the earnings of other professions, you'll see a pretty big discrepancy. Veterinarians are over on the far right, and on average, according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they make about $90,000. Now compare that to physicians, and the physician number listed here is family practitioners, which is one of the lowest paid human physician groups. But even that lowest paid group makes about $168,000 a year. Dentists make $156,000 a year, lawyers $129,000, optometrists $107,000, pharmacists $107,000. The only two professions that we make more than, at least of these medical type professions, are chiropractors and physical therapists. So one of the questions that comes up is this a debt issue or an earnings issue? And of course it's both. The cost of veterinary education has risen dramatically. Like I said, that's not just a veterinary school issue. The cost of education has risen dramatically in all fields, and that is probably not going to change. It needs to stabilize. It certainly can't continue to go up at the rates, but the cost of any education is not going to be as cheap in the future as it was 20 years ago. School funding is down dramatically, so it isn't like veterinary schools or any kind of advanced education are raising fees simply to be more profitable. They're raising fees because they've lost other sources of funding. And of course, that increase in tuition has been made worse by a recent increase in interest charged on government and private student loans. So debt goes up and the interest rate goes up, and that combines to make a real problem. So one of the big issues is, whose problem is this? And I think it's easy, if you're a practitioner who doesn't have any debt, who's been out from school for a while, to simply say, you know what, not my problem. They shouldn't borrow that much money. But it's not quite that simple. It's very difficult to get through veterinary school without borrowing money. It's not an inexpensive education. The other thing is that those practitioners who are out of school, don't have any debt, most of those are going to need the services of a recent graduate at some point or another. So the problem really belongs to anyone who is going to need a young veterinarian in the future. Whether you're going to need to hire one or you're going to need one to sell your practice to, you've got to be concerned about the level of debt. Employers should not be responsible solely for solving this problem. It's completely unrealistic to think that a practice owner is going to take money out of their pocket and give it to a young veterinarian for not doing any more work than they previously did. But what we do have to do is make our practices productive and better managed so that it's easier for a young veterinarian to come in, see a lot of clients, produce a lot of revenue, and then we'd be happy to pay them more money. What we have to focus on is having those efficient and productive practices that make high earnings more of a reality. Another interesting trend that we're seeing related to students is the number of those entering internships and residencies. In 1996, only about 18% of veterinary school graduates went into internship programs. In 2009, this number had increased to 26.6%, and in 2010, so this past year's graduating class, almost 30% of the students were entering internships and residencies. And there seem to be two main reasons why they do that. One is they want to gain more skills, gain more confidence in treating patients, so increase the quality of care that they'd be able to offer their future patients. And the other big reason is because the students that in these internship programs are interested in pursuing a residency. It certainly would be worthwhile to understand the impact that the economy is having on those entering internships and residencies, and you almost have to assume that there is some impact there. If you look at information about the earnings that can be had over a career in different areas of veterinary medicine, you can certainly understand why students are entering internships and then going on to pursue residencies. Because being a board certified specialist is certainly the most lucrative path you can take over the length of your career. A very interesting study published in JAVMA earlier this year showed that the present value of earnings for 34 years of practice post-graduation for a board certified specialist is about $2.2 million. If you look at the earnings of a general practice owner who buys a practice immediately after graduating from veterinary school, their earnings are pretty close to the board certified specialist. They're at $2.1 million. Now, if you wait 10 years to buy a practice after graduating from veterinary school, your lifetime earnings drop. The earnings for that group is only $1.7 million. If you are a board certified specialist and don't work full time, you just practice 3/4 time, you can make as much as a general practice owner practicing full time. So again, those lifetime earnings are $1.7 million. If you are a non-owner general practitioner, so you're an associate, you never own a practice, your lifetime earnings are going to be less than anybody else's, and those come out at $1.2 million. So there is a clear economic advantage to being a board certified specialist. Now, there's a couple of interesting questions that come from that. Obviously, everybody can't go into specialty medicine. There are a limited number of specialty practices. Right now, or a couple of years ago, the count was about 745. Don't think that that's changed too dramatically in the last couple of years. Last year, there were 664 students who went into internships. Now, if we make the assumption that all of those went on to do a residency, which isn't even possible because there aren't that many residency programs, but in order to absorb all of those people in internships, every specialty practice would have to be hiring a new person every year. And that's not realistic. That isn't happening now. It wasn't happening pre-recession, and it's not realistic to think that it would happen in the future. But it does raise the question, how soon will the pipeline be full? We know that all of the students that go into internship programs are not going to do residencies, so many will not ever enter the world of specialty medicine. But more and more are going to with this level of interest. And so what's going to happen? If there aren't jobs for them at specialty practices, are they going to start associating with general practices? What will that do to specialty referral? Will more cases be kept in general practices because they'll have more advanced doctors there? Will specialty referral then start marketing directly to the consumer because they're short of clients? If we have too many specialists, will the cost of referral medicine drop? And if the cost drops, will salaries drop? We don't know the answers to this yet. This isn't an immediate problem. But if the interest in referral medicine continues, and if the economics of referral medicine continue to look good, this could be a problem that we're going to face in the future. I think the most important thing that we have to remember about this whole student debt issue is that it's putting pressure on students. Students have to make intelligent financial choices. They are going to pick practices where they have the ability to earn more money and they have opportunities for ownership. And so if you are currently an owner of a practice, what you want to do is make your practice be one of those practices that young veterinarians are going to want to come to. Either they're going to want to work in your practice or they're going to want to buy it. But you need to have an attractive practice because they're going to bypass the ones where they can't make a good living.